All right, folks. So for reasons that'll become clear over the next couple of days, I was going to continue. The last couple of videos I've done have focused a fair amount on Venusian energy, or the energy of Venus, and on the Venus and Gemini transit that is currently active. And I feel like I have one more video to do on it, for the simple reason that, over the next few days, weeks, um, there are, as planets transit the sign of Gemini, Mercury and Venus at present, they're going to trine Saturn in Aquarius and square Neptune in Pisces. And I will do a video on that. Honestly, I feel like I should. I really struggled with wanting to do that video before the new moon in Cancer video, but it's really kind of a perverse idea at this point in time because the new moon in Cancer is occurring in less than 2 hours time. So it actually makes sense to do the new moon in Cancer video, and then the next video I'll continue to focus on the same. Both these videos are continuations of thematically of what I was trying to communicate over the past 2 videos that I did about Venus's energy and finding a sort of collected, embodied place from which to take action. And that, in general, sounds like good advice at all times. But in the current astrology, I certainly feel like we're being called upon to do so. The transits that I'm interested in today's video are all kind of tense and dynamic transits. And the emphasis is on the word tense, and there's a need to take action. And with regard to whatever mode I was inviting you to be in over the last 2 videos, being in that mode with this new moon occurring in a couple of hours, and then what this new moon brings over the next 28 days, but especially over the next week to 2 weeks as we head towards the Capricorn full moon. Frankly, with new moons, as I've said to you before, I find that new moons bring in something within 24 to 48 hours. Not all, it's not always, but I'm always like, okay, here it is, whatever it is, whether it is something that I would deem positive or challenging, irrespective, there's a need to take action, a call to arms, if you will, but that's really referring to, again, I don't think that's not the right paradigm. I would go back. Feminine energies are very strong as a potential strategy. And again, I'm going to refer to those last 2 videos, and I will focus on that again in the next video that I do with Venus currently in Gemini, and both Mercury and Venus getting ready to make important transits. With this new moon, there are 3 or 4 things that I want to focus on. One is that the new moon is conjunct Lilith, or Black Moon Lilith. Now that in itself sounds scary, so we'll expand on that. Secondly, on the way to this new moon, the new moon squared Jupiter in Aries. Third, Mars in Aries is getting ready to square Pluto in Capricorn. Now that is the most aggressive, assertive, violent of the transits that is in place. And then the fourth is that, and this is lovely energy, really, for all intents and purposes, or necessary energy, is that Uranus and the North Node are getting ready to conjunct. And when they do conjunct, Mars will join them. So between the 31st of July and the 1st of August, Mars, Uranus, and the North Node will conjunct. When, the North Node Uranus conjunction is something that I've been watching and waiting for. And I remember distinctly the moment when I realized that Mars would be, you can't make up. I'm constantly amazed. You know that I am a skeptical astrologer insofar as I'm always like, test the transit. See if this resonates. See if this makes sense for you. See if this is actually giving you something that feels resonant and is worth tapping into. But, when I see things like that, it's kind of, July is an important month as it proceeds. It's an important month. It's like all the, there's a third, after today's video, there's the Venus and Mercury and Gemini transits, and then there's another video that I need to do on the Taurus transits, just to kind of remind everyone with regard to where we are at, because Mars is going to come into Taurus on July the 5th, and at the end of the month, it's gonna conjunct Uranus in the North Node. Kind of amazing. Okay, now the new moon itself is conjunct Lilith. On the way to becoming a new moon, just before the new moon occurs, the sun and the moon square Jupiter. Well, the moon squares Jupiter. The sun is squaring Jupiter a little bit earlier. And the two transits that this new moon is codifying over the next 28 days is Mars square Pluto, which I think occurs on, hold on one second, I have the date for that, hopefully. Mars square Pluto is on July the 1st. And at the end of July, this meetup between Uranus, Mars, and the North Node, which honestly is something that I would say is what we've been waiting on all year, which is probably the most important sort of transit conjunction of the year. Okay. As far as rulership and dispositing, it's with the new moon in Cancer. The moon is the ruler of Cancer. The new moon is the most powerful, is both the ruler and the dispositor of the chart. We do not need to look any further. So focus over the next 28 days on what will make you content. With the moon, we often say she rules our emotions, our intuition, but I often find that what that translates into what will make you content, what will satisfy you, what will make you happy, what will make you content. And the moon is always, the moon in the chart is always pointing to wherever the moon is in your chart, achieving whatever you're trying to achieve in that part of the chart, and I mean wherever the moon is in your natal chart, is what is going to give you contentment. And you're constantly going to be striving for that contentment. And if you are not, if things are not going right in that part of the chart, it doesn't matter how well everything else is going, you are not going to find contentment. I'm not going to use the word peace of mind, because we let mind be linguistically sort of in the realm of we'll give that to Mercury. But isn't it interesting, you know, when sometimes in Jyotish or in ancient Indian astrology, the peace of mind was the mind was associated with the moon. The moon was associated with the individual. All right, let's bring this back. So issues related to what will make us content might be at the forefront over the next 28 days. That's an important drumbeat, and it's the least interesting thing that I have to say in this video. But in terms of rulership, we might be at a point in this year now when things come down to when we are reluctant to put up with a great deal of BS, which is why those Venusian strategies of being grounded, polite, of having integrity, of speaking from a place of integrity, of reaching agreement from a place of integrity, and maybe finding that in the process of reaching agreement can't be reached in certain cases. Take a look at, especially my last video. If you don't have time to look at the last two, take a look at my last video. And I will come to that again in the next one. Lilith is not, or Black Moon Lilith is not a body in the skies. It is like the nodes, a calculated point. And there are various Liliths, there are multiple Liliths. But it's this Black Moon Lilith that I find has the most impact. And Lilith, of course, mythologically or archetypally, is the first wife of Adam, who refused to listen to him, refused to be subjugated to him. Now, Adam always comes across as a little bit of a dweeb, frankly, so you can't really... Lilith embodies, you know, depending on what you read or what you study, she's rebellious, and she's our shadow side, and she's our destructive side, and I find with Lilith, the energy can go one of two ways. Certainly, the energy that will be triggered is that you are not going to want to put up with a lot of BS, and you'll know what is BS. You'll know what it's not BS. You're not going to be in a space where you will want to put up with what will seem disrespectful to you. What you simply will not be able to allow. What is non-negotiable to you. Now, with Lilith, it doesn't happen in a Uranian way, where there's rebellion because of authenticity. With Uranus, it's a different type of authenticity. There's an element of self-discovery. With Lilith, it comes from, again, an emotional place. It's and as Mars is getting ready to square Pluto, I think, well, the Mars-Eris conjunction in Aries it will be complete by the time of, there you have on the way to the new moon, as Mars is getting ready to square Pluto. I think yesterday Mars and Eris had a conjunction, so those are two warlike bodies sort of conjuncting with each other, irrespective, sort of struck by these feminine archetypes that are so strong. This notion of what will make us content, this notion of what emotionally, even perhaps if you want to use the word egoically, is going to be something that we're going to want to put up with or not want to put up with. And this is why with Lilith, all sorts of things get sprung on her. Not being rational, being rebellious, being violent, our shadow side, the things we repress or suppress. And the repression, suppression, I think that that's a more of a male projection. I think it's much more about a kind of innate authenticity and a knowing compromise is such an interesting word. And we're going to focus on that on our next video, and we focused on that a little bit in the last video. But I think we all know, with Lilith, there's just an autonomy of thought and behavior. There's dominion over her own self and body. It's an interesting, given some of the politics of what have been playing out in the United States, over the past 5 days, the sun has been conjunct Lilith. I always look at sort of 5-degree conjunctions. I know different people look at it differently. Some people might say when the sun entered Cancer about a week ago is when this conjunction with Lilith became active. So this idea of you're not the boss of me, but more than that, a dominion over ourselves and an innate knowing of what will really make us happy and what will not, what will work and what will not. Because sometimes we make compromises because we want something really badly, or we think that this is our chance, and then we end up in, it's like if you take a job or you go on a date with someone, or where you just know you're doing it to be nice, you're doing it to be good, you're doing it to be self-protective sometimes, you're doing it so that you can bring in some money, you're doing it to set, but somewhere you're just like, you're not in integrity with yourself. And when you enter those environments are typically doomed because they're already corrupted, they're already falling apart, you're going. And so sooner or later, something will erupt. And then that Lilith archetype will come up of, oh, this person is rebellious, oh, they have a shadow side, or they're repressing these emotions, or they weren't this, or they weren't that. This kind of... But clearly, the new moon is conjunct this point, and this archetype will be active. Mars square Pluto. First and foremost, the new moon, not the new moon squaring Jupiter, but the sun and the moon squaring Jupiter on the way to the new moon. And again, action needs to be taken in the Cancer part of your chart to allow Jupiter to manifest a new beginning in the Aries part of your chart. And so there's a dynamic tension. Now, I don't believe that the new moon is square Jupiter. I look at approaching transits, and by the time the new moon happens, these transits have occurred. Within minutes, but they have occurred. But the ground is laid for some sort of action needing to be taken in the Cancer part of your chart that will allow Jupiter to end a 12-year cycle and start a 12-year cycle in the Aries part of your chart. So again, that's a necessity for action. Depending on what part of the chart this is in, it could be a dynamic forward-looking action, or it could be a defensive, self-protective action. The new moon, coming off of this square to Jupiter, conjuncts Lilith. Whatever you do over the next 28 days has to come from a place of integrity towards yourself, or you might find yourself in a situation or an environment where you are saying yes when you mean to say no. You could be being, and this is something to watch for too, you could be saying no when you mean yes out of a place of rebellion. So I would watch that shadow side of that kind of middle finger giving, the irate middle finger. This is why I said these feminine archetypes and working with the Venusian energy is going to be really helpful. With the feminine archetypes, even with Venus, who is notoriously conflict averse, unlike Lilith or unlike Eris, with the feminine archetype, it's just that somewhere when a decision is made from within the feminine archetype, it is so much more powerful and so much more definitive than when it is made within the male archetype. It's a quiet thing. It's an internal decision. And from it, all things spring. With Mars, with sort of the male archetype, there can be violence, there can be aggression, there can be assertiveness, but it lacks that kind of deep-seated primordial creative power that can keep feeding something for a long, long time. So even with Venus, who is conflict averse, when that energy is grounded, it is that kind of flow energy. A forest can burn down in a forest fire, but the shoots will still creep up. Now that's a powerful one. If the energy is a little bit more pissed off, still you sort of watch out for that. So coming from an embodied, knowing what is going to work for you in whatever actions are being demanded or need to be taken, and engaging with others from that place of integrity. And Venus is in Gemini. And so when it comes to communicating and writing and talking to people and fitting in with the communities or the groups, whoever it is that you're going to be discussing, and Mercury's in Gemini for a little bit longer, might be helpful, because at least then, if we come from a place of deep-seated integrity, but are able to, I think with Lilith, things can really go one of two ways. I think there can be the meltdown, middle finger, turn back, walk away, and keep walking approach. Or I think a more constructive, and I don't think I'm blowing smoke when I say this, I think just innately knowing which rooms you will be happy in and which rooms you will not be happy in. And over the next 28 days, when those discussions and when those conversations come up, to come from a place of integrity, but also a place of decency and listening and getting a sense of, and then knowing what decisions to make, and the decisions will continue to unfold. You don't know, don't let anybody rush you into a decision. If the decision doesn't need to be made over the next 28 days, but action just needs to be taken, then the action can be taken. If the decision comes 3 months from now, it can come 3 months from now. You don't have to rush into it. But certainly, what is going to make you content, what is not going to make you content, where do you enter agreements and have conversations and entertain opportunities or entertain possibilities from a place of integrity so that they don't blow apart or fall apart weeks or months after something gets initiated. And what is it that needs to be done in the Cancer part of the chart, either whether it is forward-looking or defensive, that'll allow Jupiter to create that new beginning in the Aries part of your chart? What needs to be done in the Aries part of your chart? Action needing to be taken either towards the attainment of goals or again to protection of boundaries with Mars squaring Jupiter, Mars squaring Pluto in the Capricorn part of your chart where there's a transformation. Pluto has been trying to create a transformation in the Capricorn part of your chart for a long time now. And there's some action that Mars needs to take in the Aries part of your chart that will allow for that transformation to occur. This transit is a more violent, assertive, aggressive transit. So we just need to, till July the 1st, there's a hot-headedness in the air. So again, accessing that Venusian energy is going to be helpful, but it is unmistakable. It will not be denied. Something needs to be done in the Aries part of your chart to allow Pluto to continue this transformation in a way that you want it to in the Capricorn part of your chart. And then, above and beyond everything, we've got this Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction coming up at the end of the month. Where is it that we're being asked to develop and pour our energies, depending on where Taurus sits in your chart? I'm going to do a video on that 2 or 3 days from now, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I'm just going to say the key word at all times, but especially with this cycle, is integrity. And letting, this is a very lunar word, she is the ruler of this chart and the dispositor of the chart and is conjunct Black Moon Lilith, which is a point in her orbit around the Earth. And letting that inner knowing, that intuition, that very lunar thing inform you quietly as to what is going to work for you and what is not going to work for you in an unembarrassed way. It's something that first you just need to know. You don't have to blurt it out or express it or hit someone with it unless they are not listening. But knowing and having that compass is going to make all the difference in the world. And approaching your assessment of whatever's going on around you through that lens is going to make all the difference and could actually lead to constructive and positive outcomes. Because you might then know what is it in a particular situation that will lead to contentment, that's something that you will be able to work with. Watch for, by all means, pride and shadow side, insecurity and hurt and rebelliousness and anger that could be self-destructive. But with Lilith, somewhere having that dominion over one's... I'm not surprised the video got cut off. I was watching the time and of course it did. With Lilith, somewhere having dominion over our own independence of thought. Yeah. I've used the word integrity. Alignment. Emotional compass. Not feeling subjugated. Not feeling forced, not feeling compromised, not feeling subjugated. And with the squares, you know, a square happening on the way to the new moon, then the Mars-Pluto square, an important assertive square, action clearly needs to be taken. Now, you don't have to take action now. Let the new moon occur and let actions dictate what actions need to be taken. But, and I'm summarizing now, and with the moon being the most important body here in the, contentment, integrity, where we will be happy, what will work for us. If you're not happy in a situation, it's just miserable. And that intuitive knowing and having that integrity with ourselves and protecting ourselves and protecting our independence and our autonomy. You know what? I've said it. It's about not feeling subjugated, pushed, or forced into a decision. And you'll know when someone is doing it. You'll know when someone is doing it inadvertently and may not, and is basically asking you to bend to their will a certain amount in a way that doesn't feel entirely right to you, that feels a little bit detrimental to you, that feels like if you say yes to it, but that doesn't mean that there isn't room for conversation, that there isn't the possibility of a constructive outcome. And some action needs to be taken. The new moon in the Cancer part of your chart to help Jupiter, and in the Aries part of the chart to help out Capricorn. And I'm being polite about help. Squares, especially the Mars-Pluto squares, a lot more, you've got aggressive Mars and you've got sort of the relentless Pluto at a stop sign, and Mars is going to go first. But these are the kind of people who sort of don't like, especially with Mars, don't like delays, don't like to be stared down by someone. These are both sort of assertive planets. That happens on July the 1st. So knowing your chart is going to be helpful, but if you don't know your chart, just because you see where Aries sits in your chart and where Cancer sits in your chart and where Capricorn sits in your chart, and you can piece this together and figure out what's been going on and blah, blah, blah. But if you don't, just know that if it feels like there's a pot that's coming up to a boil, or you feel like it's been coming up to a boil in such a way that some action, you would not be surprised if some action needs to be taken over the next couple of weeks, or even over. July is a very important month. July is the most important month of the year. And I will develop that more in the next couple of videos. Not the next video, which is going to be about the Gemini, but when I come to the Taurus video. Okay, I will leave it at this. Happy new moon in Cancer. Cancer is a protective sign. One more thing I want to say about the sign of Cancer, which is people who have strong Cancer placement in their charts notoriously move sideways. You have to, if you're dealing with someone with a strong Cancer placement, you really got to sort of wrap them up in a blanket and give them their teddy bear and their glass of milk and cookies and really make them feel comfortable for them to be able to be direct with you. Otherwise, sort of the hard shell comes on and they move sideways to do whatever needs to be done. And don't get in the way. It's still a cardinal sign. It's still a leadership sign. It's one of the softer leadership signs, softer cardinal signs in comparison to Aries and Capricorn, but it's still very much a leadership sign. Like Libra, another cardinal sign, but that has a softer quality. So we may be circling around each other, but at the same time, we may be very keenly aware of whatever it is that we feel compelled to protect. Our hearts, our feelings, our hearts. And that might be at the center of it all with this new moon in Cancer, when we talk about what compromises we may be being asked to make and what actions are necessary to make progress in a way that doesn't make us fundamentally unhappy. And be careful with this kind of energy of scarcity consciousness. If I say no to this, then nothing will happen, kind of. Depends on the situation. I'm going to let you assess it. If it's a job or you need the money or whatever it is that's coming up for you, by all means, you need to make your own decisions. But at the same time, make your own decisions. But at the same time, I will mention that with this sort of Lilith energy, this is why it's hard to do general videos. You don't want people to get overly influenced. Your hands are on the steering wheel of your life. You do what makes sense for you, okay? If you do have to say yes when you mean to say no, be clear about why you're doing it. Be clear about why you're doing it, so you don't go into demonic Lilith mode, where you're saying yes when you mean to say no, or saying no when you mean to say yes, and then 3 weeks later, 3 months later, 6 months later, you erupt outraged. If you know why you are saying yes when you mean to say no, or no when you say yes, then just know what that reason is, so that it can be clarity to you as to why you're acting. Again, even though you're not technically in integrity, it has its own kind of integrity and it has its own kind of reasoning. Okay, feel free to share this, comment on it, like it. Comments and likes will drive more traffic, I think, on YouTube. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button. And I think there's one option on the bell icon that has the wiggly bell that will tell you, notify you whenever I do new videos. 2 more videos to come, of course, that I've just outlined, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks.